a 15-minute break while the dining room was broken down and set up for this closing plenary. I'm actually really excited to be part of this conversation. Childcare always comes up when the question is workforce, when it's about how to move a community forward. And in Washington County, we are extremely fortunate to, in the last few years, have a community organization that both has established a new childcare and has figured out a path towards expanding to where it can really will make a meaningful difference in the childcare capacity in Western Washington County. And for scores of families will make a difference on their ability to accomplish their goals. So our panel, we're very grateful for Mano for being our panel. The title is When Children and Families Thrive, Communities Thrive. And that title actually came out of a conversation with the panelists in that you just can't focus on childcare. You have to take a more holistic approach if you expect to support families and expect to get the outcomes that you want. And I'm really happy to be the moderator here. My name is Charles Rudelitch. I'm the Executive Director of Sunrise County Economic Council. With us today is Leslie Monroy, who's Mano's Migrant Education Program Director, Juana Vazquez, who is Mano's Executive Director and the Director of Rayitos, and Laura Thomas, who is Mano's Access to Essential Services and Advocacy Director. And I guess I'm hoping this is a conversation, but to just start, I'll probably ask sequentially if you would please introduce yourself with more information than I gave, but describe what you do, how did you come to this work, and why does it matter?
Hi everyone, I'm Leslie, as he mentioned. I got introduced to Mano back in 2017 through a friend that was working at the time at Mano. She told me about this opportunity that Mano had with AmeriCorps Vista. I decided to take a risk and move everything that I had from New Jersey to Maine during that time without really thinking what the future was gonna hold for me. After the year was up, the executive director at that time, he offered me a full-time position working with the Migrant Education Program as a person that would just sign up families to the program. I kind of was the only one in the whole state that knew kind of how to enroll families into the program. And then after that, I just kept moving up in different roles as opportunities came up. And when Juana became the director of Mano, I became the director of the program, the Migrant Education Program. And I think that was back in 21. So that's kind of like the story of how I came to Mano. And why it's important to me is because I'm originally from Colombia, and when I moved to New Jersey when I was 10, and I always saw the experiences that immigrants had in New Jersey, but I live in an area, my mom lives in an area that is very Latinx based and very close-knit, and I started experiencing kind of more cultures or different situations when I went to college with the knowledge that I gained from being in college. And then when I moved to Maine, I saw a different world, a world that I was not used to seeing. I think I have to say that it was kind of like the first time that I experienced like, oh, I'm different, in a sense of like, when I came here, I was kind of like only one that looked like a certain type of way. I started seeing how that was kind of, in a way, not affecting me, but it was something that I recognized. And then through Mano, we had like racial equity training, and that opened my mind to a whole bunch of things that I learned. And so I became very appreciative of the mentorship that Juana provided through our years working together, and just learning from Mano as much as I could and grow as myself personally, but also with the work that I do. And I'm really passionate about the work that Mano does. I think I'm very intertwined with the values of Mano, and yeah, I love helping people, and I love helping the organization grow.
Hi everyone, my name is Juana Vazquez. I come from a migrant seasonal farm working family. My family moved to Maine following migrants' seasonal work to do sea cucumbers back in 1998. So before then, I was traveling the states from north to south, following different migrant streams and doing different agricultural work throughout different states. I came to Mano as a migrant parent as well during blueberries. I got kind of involved before when, as a young child, I participated in the events that Mano was doing, cultural events in the community in 2010, when it was really just a community organization of volunteers in the community trying to get together and build community with cultural and language and opportunities for children to go into learning English classes or tutoring support. And then after that, when I was a parent in the migrant education program, I got introduced to migrant education program Comienza en Casa, It Starts at Home, which was a program really to support migrant parents into preparing their children into pre-K and that transition into going into school. So that's kind of where I got really into like education and really the love for like just supporting kids and supporting parents into thriving and supporting them to get their kids into school as well. So I started in the migrant education program and then moved up to being the executive director 3 years ago. And I think for me, the work that Mano does is really important, and it goes back to my own experience and lived experience of being a migrant child and being a child that moved around states for a living as with parents. And a lot of the work that Mano does is really supporting seasonal farm workers in Maine and also immigrants in down East Maine. And we do a lot of our services in a very holistic way and trying to approach the way we support migrant workers and the way we support children and families, a way to push them to not just like be able to survive that day, but also like really empowering them to be able to like reach their dreams, have dreams and goals, and not just the day-to-day things. So that's why it really matters to me. It really matters to me. I'll talk a little bit more about the childcare later, but I'll let Laura introduce you.
Thank you, Juana. Hi, everyone. My name is Laura. My background is education. I graduated from the University of Maine in Orono in 2009 and found this amazing community in Millbridge where I wanted to work. I started teaching there as English as a second language at a local elementary school in 2010 and joined the board at Mano. I wanted to connect with the community and start closing some of the gaps that I was seeing at the school. And I continued in that work until 2021. And I learned a lot about the education system through COVID. That showed me some of the things that I thought we were doing better at, we weren't so much doing better at. And that was when Juana took over as executive director at Mano. And she reached out to me and I'm like, I would absolutely love to work for you and find a way to make a difference that is more concrete than what I'm feeling like I'm doing in the public school system. I am very much passionate about supporting families, finding pathways to get around and get over barriers, working as an organization to start to tackle to remove those barriers so they don't exist for families and communities. And I love doing that for Mano and the work that they do to stay grounded with community so that I know the work that I'm doing isn't just what I imagine needs to happen, but is very much grounded in what the community is telling us they need. So that's me.
In your experience working with parents and grandparents who are responsible for young children in Washington County or anywhere, are they finding the child care they need to work to go back to school? And if not, how are they managing?
I can also share a little bit in that they're not finding the childcare they need. And I think the gaps, and sometimes it's even transportation to childcare that exists for them. There's some great funding out there that helps cover the cost, but covering the cost doesn't help if you have to take a 40-minute drive from your employment to do pick up and drop off, and that doesn't work around your school schedules for your other children. And we've had, families that, have to either not work and they're losing income for their families because they're not having that childcare. Older children that can't participate in other activities because they have to watch siblings at home. And I would say, a myriad of other impacts that touch both families socially and economically because they don't have access to childcare.
I think another thing I would add is there is those opportunities like the child care subsidy program, but that doesn't always work for everyone, especially migrant seasonal farm workers who are here, families who are here for a short period of time. Because of the system and how it works, they don't get to apply for that. By the time that they apply and they hear back, they're already gone and transferred to a different state. So I think that that's one of the things that we see in the families that we support is that when they are here for migrant seasonal work, blueberries, wheats, or other kind of work, a lot of the child care places are already filled with full-time slots, year-round child. And there's no slots that are allocated to seasonal families that are here for their children. So we see a lot of siblings, older people staying, or someone have to shift schedules or whatnot to be able to accommodate that.
I agree with everything that's being said, but I think some of the ways that Mano supports, we have the blueberry harvest school during the summer, and that's a way of, parents, we have heard from parents when we do our parent meetings, that it's very helpful in the sense to for sure know that if they come for the season, they're going to have childcare during those 3 weeks that they're here. But again, that's not for everyone. They have to qualify for the program because it is a federal program. But that's kind of some of the ways, and obviously the childcare.
And just as a follow-up, how is childcare provided for migrant workers who are here for the reading season?
So currently there is no childcare that's provided. So if their kids are here, it's different from blueberries because during blueberries there's no public school. During these season, the public schools are running, so kids who are eligible for public school are able to go to school. Other than that, there is no other options for parents. So there's often one parent that has to not work and stay home with the children. Sometimes families get together and they watch a group of kids in the camps or whatnot. If that's sometimes an older sibling is watching them as well. So that goes into them not being able to participate in sports or any other activities that are happening as well.
And I would add that some of the needs is different from blueberries, where we get more single workers coming to the area. So we have, in the migrant education, we serve up to 20 years old. So we have some 20-year-old, 19-year-olds that we provide services and support. But we usually don't see that many younger children. But if we do, then it will be one.
And my next question is related to that. I mean, I grew up here, and there's always been seasonal workers. But with the mechanization of the blueberry harvest, the growth of the reefing industry, the changes in seafood processing, I think, I know it's transformed from what it was in the 70s and the 80s. And who are the migrant workers who are coming to Washington County now? What industries are they working in? I'll start there.
Yeah, I think some of them are migrant workers that have been coming for a long time. We see families from tribal communities, Passamaquoddy communities. We also see families coming up from Canada, from the Migrant communities that have been doing this for years. So I think that that's something to recognize, that there has been seasonal farm working people that have come to Washington County for blueberries, for other industries as well. We also see a large influx of families coming from like Haiti. We've seen a lot of people coming from Haiti, a lot of central and southern countries like Mexico, Honduras, Nicaragua. So we see families coming from different countries as well. And then we also see families like my family that's traveling migrant streams across the states of the United States. So it's coming from Florida, coming from Washington, coming up from doing blueberries in New Jersey to blueberries in Maine, and going back and doing apples and coming back and doing wheat. So we see families that have followed these migrant streams across the states as well every year. So yeah, we see them coming for blueberries or reeds. We've seen people come for seafood processing in Washington County, and other like food industries as well, landscaping work, forestry work more recently. So those are kind of like different industries that migrant seasonal farm workers have been here for. Yeah, we're seeing it, Puerto Rican families and people that are coming as well from there more recently too, that it's grown as well.
And I know that Mano has been very active in how it supports migrant families and migrant workers while they're here in Washington County. What do you see as the missed opportunities for the community more generally in how we welcome migrant and seasonal workers?
So I think as part of our, what we really sort of want to do in welcoming workers is that we host welcome and resource centers. We try to do those for both blueberries and reeds, and that's connecting with partners and creating safe spaces for the community to come and access food and clothing. A lot of these workers are entirely dependent on the labor contractors that bring them here for both transportation to whether it's I need to go to the bank and cash my check or I need to go to the grocery store. And some of them don't even know where they're coming to when they get in the van to come here. We've had workers, can you show me on a map where I am because I don't know where I am. I'm not even sure how far from home I am. And trying just to support them in feeling welcome here and safe here and letting them know that they still belong here with us as much as possible. And making sure they have access, at least initially, to food. They don't get paid until they start working. And they have to work for a while before they get that first paycheck. And if you're traveling in a white van with 14 other people, there's not a lot of space in there for anything, for personal belongings or for food. They don't often come prepared for the climate difference, especially if they're coming from the southern part of the country. And so just trying to make sure that they have access to those things to just be able to work and be safe while they're here. I think for families that come and want to stay, there's a lot of missed opportunities. I think some of them are just, there's just not enough housing. There's not enough childcare. Because I think they come here and there's a welcoming here they don't sometimes see in a lot of other places, and they want to stay. I think there's a lot of challenges and barriers still, but I think they feel supported. So I would love to think about ways to, how do we get more of them to stay when they want to be here?
Yeah, I would add that there's also missed opportunity in our economic and system. Like farm workers bring a lot, not just the work they do here, but the impact that they have on businesses here. I mean, if you've been in a store during August and you see a lot of workers, like there's a lot of money that's left here. There's a lot of impact that they bring into the communities here in Washington County. So I think that there's a missed opportunity in terms of like, how are we making sure that they feel welcome? And when they walk into resources, when they walk into stores, when they walk into a business, that we see, yeah, they're here, and that there's no like discrimination, racism that is seen when people walk into the stores or people walk into businesses, banks. I mean, you see a line of them in the outside of a bank. So there's a lot that they bring and a lot of strengths that they bring to make the communities thrive. And I think that there's a missed opportunity in terms of like how as a whole community we're welcoming them into the area.
Yeah, I think aside from all of that, there's also like a language missed opportunity, language barriers that we see in systems, and it's challenging to get government and local agencies to align with those needs. And sometimes, there's they don't value the culture and the representation in the system. There's always a kind of pressure to do that. So I would say that language barriers is something that it's really needed. I think not just in Washington County, but throughout the state.
So, and this question, Juana, is actually based on your, honestly, answer I heard you give a few weeks ago at a different meeting around the role of bilingual childcare. And I have, I guess, a few questions. Why is bilingual childcare important? What are the benefits for the children and their families? And do you see a benefit for the larger community?
Yeah, I mean, I think I can refer back to, the speaker this morning. I mean, even the early years of a child are so important. So exposing them and having them opportunities to be in a bilingual setting, how is it not beneficial? I think that is just so beneficial, and especially in a world we live in today. There are so many benefits on speaking two different languages. There's a benefit to just monolingual children who are otherwise not exposed to other languages. So I think that there's such a strength and asset into encouraging everybody to have be bilingual. I mean, there's a benefit into brain development. There's a lot of benefits. There's a benefit to job opportunities when they get older. There's a benefit we see studies on how they do better in schools when it takes them a while to catch up, but they go beyond. So I think that there is a benefit into bilingual childcare, and that opportunity for families here as a larger community to start, especially with the young ones, in exposing them to different languages and giving them that boost of those 5 years. They are getting so much into their brains, and their brain is developing, and if we have that opportunity for them to develop 2 languages that they can then just keep growing, that is such a benefit for them. I can speak even for my own children. I'm raising bilingual children, and they can switch from English to Spanish depending on the setting they're in. We see the benefits of we have children right now in the center who have been with us for 3 years, almost 3 years since we opened, and they can switch from English to Spanish, and they're little, 3-year-olds, 4 years. They're just getting the language development, but being in that setting is gonna just open so many doors for them. I think for a community, it's gonna open more doors. I mean, we always talk about the workforce and how we don't have adults who are bilingual. I mean, starting to raise children who are bilingual, in 20 years, these children are gonna be bilingual. We're gonna have children who are bilingual, who are ready for jobs, who are gonna be able to speak 2 languages. So I think there's such a benefit into that. I think for families who are from a different language, there's a benefit of having your own language and your culture present. And that sense of belonging, that your language is there, and that your children are not losing their language is so important. And I think that's one of the very important reason of why Mano and Mano moved into the direction of bilingual. We were hearing from community members, our kids are losing their language. We've seen it throughout history of how communities have lost their language, or their language has been taken. And that's one of the things that we want to help families and children and have a space, an opportunity to keep their language and to keep practicing their language, and to have safe spaces to do that. So that when they go into public education or go into other settings, their language and culture, they have a sense of that's important to them.
Thank you. And I realized the question I shared was about expanding Rayitos Day. So I should ask, why did you start it? Because it's no small thing for all of us nonprofits. have heard that childcare is needed. You're the one who launched one. So what was the decision-making process, and kind of why and how did you do that?
Yeah, I mean, I can go a little bit into how it started. CEI was launching a childcare cohort in 2019 that Mano got involved in, and the idea was to expand childcare in the state of Maine. There's especially Washington County, which is a childcare desert. There is not a lot of childcare in Washington County. So I started in that program with the idea of let's learn how we can do this, what does this involve. My sister, about 10 years ago, had a childcare program in Millbridge, which she had to shut down because of all the regulations, all of the paperwork, everything that is required to keep a childcare running. It's hard, and I think that is one of the things that I feel like is stopping people from opening childcare businesses. I mean, we heard this morning, they don't get paid enough. Staff don't get paid enough. We're caring for young children who are really important, especially in those years. So I think that that's one of the things that I was really passionate about, and we were hearing as well from the community that need of childcare, the need of when we were supporting farm workers, seasonal farm worker families coming, and we were trying to find childcare for their kids, and there was nothing. The need of people wanting to go back to work, and there's no childcare. So I think that we would just kind of repeatedly hearing that. I approached Ian, which was our executive director at that time, in terms of we were going through this process, and I think this is the time. There's money in here to build a childcare, to start a childcare business, and to see how it just open the doors and see the opportunity that it creates. So we opened a childcare in our current location in Millbridge in our conference room in 2021. I kind of launched the idea that nobody was using our conference room at that time because it was COVID, so it was empty. And we couldn't find a place. Yeah, there was no location. So it's let's just do it and open it up in the conference room and see what happens. With the idea that we would move out in a year. It's been 3 years, and we're still there. But I think the community is so accepting of it. The families, the staff. I have great staff that work with us. So I think that there's a need, and everybody sees that. We talk about it all the time. You go to conferences, childcare and housing. Those are two things that always pop up. So I think it's why not invest in families and children? I think that's a holistic approach, and it's we're investing in families and children is investing in the community. And yeah, when children and families are thriving, we're going to see communities thriving. And I think that was one of the things. It's I think it's time to invest in families and children and go beyond that.
Thank you. Can you talk a little bit?
Could I ask a question?
Of course.
When you open the childcare in Rudelitch, is it open to everyone? Is it open just to minorities? Because that is a golden opportunity to develop relationships at a very young age and then they grow together. So it would seem a perfect opportunity also to look for craftsmanship and lots of support.
Yes, so the childcare is open to everyone in the community. If you're a Spanish-speaking family, a seasonal family, a year-round family, a down east family, English-only family, it's open to the community. So yeah, anybody can access the childcare program. Yep. So we have currently, in our current space, we have capacity to serve 12 children. So we have a limited space because it's in our conference room, but we're expanding it. So in the new space, we'll be able to serve up to 64 children. So we're going from one conference room like this to 5 rooms, and being able to do infant care, toddler, preschooler, and after-school care. And we're also it's also expanding our food pantry space. So we have another little room that is currently holding our culturally relevant food pantry, and in our new center, we're also expanding that. We'll have a space for our food pantry as well. And then we're also expanding our opportunities for children to be able to play and have a space to play. So we've created kind of you calling it a community space, it's a gym. So we'll be able to have like a basketball hoop, or be able to host like activities like yoga or Zumba or any kind of like walking groups that they can do in the winter, anything like that. So we're expanding that as well, so to the community, and it will be open to the community as well, all the community.
That the building looks awesome. The walls inside are not up, but if anybody would like to stop by and visit and take a tour, Juana is giving tours.
Stop by. I mean, I can talk a little bit more of the other services. It's also expanding job opportunities. And in Washington County, I mean, we're working really closely with Washington County Community College. We have an apprenticeship both for assistant teachers and lead teachers. So it's also an opportunity for folks who are in the area that are interested in early education and want an opportunity to work. It's also going to be expanding. We're going to be expanding from having currently 5 positions to 9 new positions. So expand the opportunities in careers as well. So, yeah.
And I know that you have an ongoing capital campaign. Is support still needed?
Yes. So if anybody is interested in learning more, yeah, we have a current capital campaign going on right now. We have launched it October 1st. We're doing 50K in 50 days. So if you go to the website, you'll see more information of all the benefits that it will have, and ways to support or get involved as well.
It's a matching donation right
Yes.
now.
Yes, so we need double the dollars. So if anybody donates, we have a matching donation for it. Let's Kids Challenge campaign.
Got a great page on our website.
Kind of getting to the topic, or the title of the talk. Beyond childcare, what do children and families need to thrive?
I can do this one. I mean, I think some of it we know is just access to affordable, safe housing, access to healthcare that they can get locally and not have to travel. I mean, I think that's one of the challenges of Washington County is there's no transportation. And if you need anything beyond just a typical service at your local, federally funded health clinic, you've got to travel to Bangor or potentially even further. Mental health services are even more challenging for our kids and their families. Local wait lists can be more than a year long. And when you're talking about, children that need support, a month is too long to wait, let alone even a year. And so families are tasked with, I have to miss work this day to get my children, or even myself, the services we need. So I think all of those things are challenges that are missing for families, and their ability to thrive in Washington County. I mean, I do think there's a lot of strengths in Washington County, and it's why I'm here in this space with my family. I raised my family here, but I do think there's a lot of challenges to think about. Childcare being one of them, housing, all of those things.
We see that a lot. We have our community meetings when we do our annual, like end of the year, and we ask, like, what do you want to see? A lot of communities like more celebration of culture. So we hold like 5 different events throughout the year that are very connected to the community that we serve, like Mother's Day, Father's Day. We're planning the Dia de los Muertos on November 4th, and then the Posada. And so I think those are really important because it just gives them, like Juana said, a sense of belonging and culture, and the community is always asking for that. Just want to mention that.
And to some degree, you may have answered this question, but thinking more broadly, what is a thriving community? And maybe as a sub-question or a related question is, where do you want to see the community going? I mean, what do you want it to be in 10 years or 20 years?
I want to see bilingual children. I want to see adults. When we talk, that there's more than just in this room 1 or 2 people that speaks a different language and has a different language in their belt. So in 20 years, I think hopefully we can achieve that. And when we go into space, there is bilingual adults. I think that would be so awesome to see. I think for me, I think it also creates a path into like seeing how our public education changes. I know that's another system to kind of look at, but how can we go from just being English instruction into like accepting other languages and cultures in our public education? So to me, I think that's hopefully something that we see in the direction. I think when we think about thriving communities, I mean, there's a lot of sessions that have been here, but I mean, we see youth thriving, we see families thriving, we see families moving from just the day-to-day, like, I need food, to like, this is what my dream is, and working towards their dreams and working towards their goals, and not just working to survive. So I think that, to me, that would be something that we move towards, like, the services, the supports are there for families, and that they're able to achieve their dreams.
That was awesome. And I think the other sort of thing that comes to mind for me too is, and I think there's been a lot of sort of growth just in my experience since I started working in Washington County in 2010, is more organizations that prioritizing hiring bilingual staff. Because I think there's so many resources out there for families, but they can't access them if they can't speak to somebody on the phone to help them connect with that service. And so many of that connections have to come through our organization and through our staff. And you just only have so much capacity to make those connections. And we partner with a lot of incredible organizations doing wonderful work, but we can't be the language connection in every one of those places all the time. So I love that we have partners that are hiring bilingual staff. Like Katia here has been a wonderful, I think, connection between Healthy Acadia and SCEC, and how many programs that are now that much more accessible to our community than they were before, because there's now a connection directly within the organization, and her ability to facilitate even just cooking classes and making those connections for our community means that the impact of even that organization's work is so much more deeper and so much more connected to more parts of the community.
So, I'd like to open it up to the audience questions, if anyone has any questions for the panel. Yes?
Hi. So my question is towards the Childcare Center. Without getting too far into the weeds, where did the capital come from to build on to your center for 64 children?
So we're still raising money for it. Currently, some of the money is coming from grants that we're writing, state funding from the Childcare Infrastructure Grant money. We also have some private donors and connections that have donated to the campaign as well. And then we're continuing to fundraise. We are looking into a loan to be able to bridge that while we continue to fundraise the money for it.
I would just add, it came from 2 very dedicated staff who worked really hard and went after every penny they could get to make this happen. Both Juana and our development person, Emma, who show up on Fridays, even though Emma has to drive from far away to do tours for potential donors and to share about this project, and to write all those grants, and to fill out all those requests for proposals that are pages and pages long, because every bit of that has made this work possible.
I guess I'm thinking mostly for Juana, but anybody who wants to jump in. what has surprised you the most? Good, bad, or otherwise, doing the child?
I mean, I don't think it has surprised me, but I think like the question you asked around like, is this for everyone? I think that the idea of it being for a certain community, and us being like really open into like, yeah, it's for the whole community. I think that has been something that when we were starting the childcare, I got a lot of questions about that. It's like, is this only for Spanish kiddos? Is this only for seasonal farm worker families? Like, I think that idea, I wouldn't say it surprised me, but I think it's just been kind of like a working in terms of like communication and education to like the community of like, no, this is a benefit for the whole community.
Hi. I think it's obvious that we need 10 more of you, like a full package, just sort of spread around the county. And, you know, not all of us could fill your shoes, but I wonder what advice you would have for folks, you know, looking to kind of expand the kinds of opportunities that you are succeeding in expanding. Like, you know, what would you suggest, and where would you tell us to go? What would give us hope?
I can just reflect back onto you what I've seen you do through this process, and that she's been tenacious. She's seen a problem and she's looked for a partner until she could find a solution. We had incredible community members that were bilingual, or even just primary Spanish speaking, but their credentials for early child education come from another country, so they don't count here, not on paper anyways. And she found a partner and came up with an apprenticeship program to get people who had the training and had the bilingual skills, and that's her building capacity. So when we open the center, we potentially now have staff that are going to be trained because they're now working through that process. And I think she's been that way with any sort of thing that we've sort of bumped up against. Is that if there's been a problem, she works to find a solution for it. She reaches out to partners, she makes connections, she doesn't give up. She takes advantage of every opportunity that presents itself. And I think looking back on that decision in 2019 to partner with CEI to say, let's find a way to make this happen, and now seeing it come to fruition in a brand new space that's going to not just provide childcare, but really a community space that hopefully becomes a place where all the community can come together. And then we have sometimes 250 people come up to our produce distributions that we have twice a month, right in our parking lot, which is crazy because the parking lot is bonkers for like 2 hours. We give away like 4,000 pounds of produce with partners at Good Shepherd. And I think just being that sort of hub in the community and removing barriers to access that exist in other places, and then bringing people together, I think that this space is going to do all of those things.
Thank you, Laura. I think I would also add that I think there's a really, like, Mano really values community and community voices. And I think a lot of the work we do, we are led by the community. We're moving our board to be more community-led. Our staff is, if you look at our staff, we have a staff that's from part of the community. And so I think that really paying attention to who you're serving and who is serving the community you're serving is really important into like how you provide services. We do like a lot of the work we do is based on the community feedback that we hear. So we spend a lot of time in like listening to the community and like being like truthful and like building those relationships, build in trust. And so I think that that's another big part of like you have to be really like invested in, like it's not just like, oh, this money is coming in. It's like, yeah, is this something that's gonna really impact the community that you're working with and support? And is it something that the community values as well? Because I think that there is often projects that are placed in the community without really taking the time to ask the community about it. And I think that's some of the things that for Mano is like we really take the time to really talk to the community and make those connections and really try to hear the voices of who's going to be impacted by what we do.
Do you have an idea of how many, or at least percentage, how many seasonal workers usually end up making Downey's their home at some point, going back and forth?
How many seasonal farm workers make Downey's their home?
Eventually, yeah.
Eventually.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if there's been a study around how many like families are here in the area. I mean, one of our housing projects with our housing removal fund, like we just gave out 40 awards, and so far I believe 15 people have purchased a home in Down East Maine. And then we're working with Welcome Home Down East as well, so those will be another 5 folks that kind of move into the area. But in terms of like numbers of how many people are here year round and have settled, I don't know. I probably don't know what I would say as an estimate. Probably like 600. Yeah. Yeah, I think like 600 maybe.
Migrant workers anymore because they established themselves, but how many years have that been since your family settled and other families?
Yeah, I mean, families have been settling since like the early 2000s, like about 23 years ago, 25 years ago, when like kind of when we saw the influx of migrant families moving in here to Washington County, more specifically for sea cucumber, kind of brought families here, and they kind of just have stayed in the area or connection to someone else. Seasonal farm workers, we see about like 2,000 folks, depending on the year. So that's like for blueberries and then for wreaths. Just in Washington County. We also serve seasonal workers in central Maine, southern Maine, and up in northern Maine for broccoli and other crops as well.
Charles, do you think, to all of you as a panel, do you think, what's the economic, is there an what's my question? It's like, I'm not sure there's an understanding of the economic, the financial value that the migrating farm workers are bringing into the county at any given time. And sometimes without that economic value, as harsh as that is, it's not about community, but it's about it is about thriving. It's an element of thriving. Is there data on that, Charles? I can't see you, but it's like, is there a measure of that?
There are a few, but they're not perfect. It's hard to unpack with the mechanization of the blueberry harvest how much of the blueberry harvest is dependent on migrant farm workers. A lot of it is, because that workforce doesn't exist without people coming into the area, and the loading docks won't work. Even all the harvester groups wouldn't work, get along with the factories. So that output, 40 to 100 million a year, depending on the farm gate price, is intertwined with migrant labor, and that doesn't include the value added in the blueberry factories, which is probably at least that amount, if not more. I don't have good numbers on the reading industry, although I know it has grown exponentially in the last 20 years. So that, that industry could not have grown. I mean, it used to depend on seasonal labor from people who lived in Washington County year-round when it was much, much smaller. I don't think there was a path for it to grow to its current size without migrant workers. So those are two industries that just wouldn't exist in their current form without migrant workers. And seafood's harder. The seafood is probably the impact is less, but it's a much bigger industry, and I don't know the numbers around it.
The other question I've got, and it's more of an observation, I guess, than a question, but with the likely continued in-migration to this part of the country, people from everywhere, and whether or not there's seasonal work or not, because I'm kind of pushing that to the side for right now. But I think that there's a lot to be learned and understood from Millbridge's and that part of Washington County's experience over the last 20 years. And so I really hope that other communities and other communities can aim or can learn from your experience and from the Millbridge and larger Millbridge area's experience. And be good neighbors and good communities as people come into all different places. So thank you for your leadership on this. I don't think we'd be where we are in Washington County without your and the organization's leadership.
I don't know if any of you want to speak to that, because from what I've heard from state officials, Greater Millbridge is unique. There have been seasonal workers throughout the state of Maine for generations. And, a year-round community that's growing, that has deep roots in the community and is in many ways thriving, is unique in Maine. And Julie, what are your thoughts on why it happened here?
I'm going to pass this over to Juana in just a minute. But I was going to mention, there is an economic impact study that we conducted with SCEC at Colby College, I think it was 2017. It's on our website that I think wanted to put a dollar sign to the impact of the immigrant community in Millbridge. I think that was a really good study.
It did, and it did a good job of quantifying the payroll impacts. So how people spent their money. It couldn't capture the fact the industries wouldn't exist without the work. And that was beyond the scope of the survey. But that's the number that's hard to quantify.
I mean, I would say that I think that there is something special about Millbridge. I sometimes question why my parents decided to settle in Millbridge. And I think that there is like that sense of like welcoming in the area, even though there are challenges. I think that there's challenges everywhere, but I think that there is that uniqueness in Millbridge and how it's trying to like accept cultures and accept languages and accept the community. I think that there's still work to do, but I think Millbridge to me has been like a place where I call home. It's not just a place in the map. And I think that there's a lot of families out there that are trying to find that place to call home, not just a house. And I think that that's one of the uniqueness of Millbridge, that it's growing into supporting communities to stay, and it's welcoming people into the area. So I think that that's unique to Millbridge. Greater Millbridge has, there's a place for it, and I think there's a place for it in the map, and I think that families and communities are trying to like really support the growth of it and support it as it continues to expand in services. I mean, there's a lot in Millbridge happening right now. When we have a theater, we have so much in Millbridge, and I think that's the uniqueness of it. Is I think that there's a lot of community working towards creating that. So, and mine was one of them. So, yes.
Yeah, I was gonna add that as someone that's not from Maine, I always was in awe of the amount of support that Mano represents in the community. I always said, well, if there was a Mano in my community, I probably wouldn't have left New Jersey. I probably would have stayed because I've seen the importance of building relationship with the community and being consistent in hiring community members to be part of Mano. And youth that, are in college and saying, yes, there's a space for you here and we're going to train you and support you in that. So I think that also adds to why people or to why Millbridge is special. And I think that I just wanted to highlight that and say that the staff that we have goes beyond sometimes on the amount of work that we do and the services that we provide and the flexibility that we have with community members and with emergency needs and just shows up and work really hard. And I wanted to recognize that because they are essential to making Millbridge a welcoming space for seasonal workers and for year-round communities that often don't get represented elsewhere. So,
Juana, you've got a Down East audience here who has some level of interest in your work. What would you ask of us?
I would ask to be allied. I think that there's a lot of support that Mano still needs into getting the word out there of like what we do, and folks who are willing to hear us and understand what we're doing and the importance of the work we're doing and support it by supporting it in many different ways. Like we have volunteer opportunities or the openness of coming to some of our events and learning about our culture, learning about our language and being open to that. I think that there is still that need of like creating those allies and collaboration and supports with the organization. So yeah, I think that that's one of the things that I would ask of anybody, organizations, businesses, partners, anybody, individuals in the room. So I think that, yeah, creating those relationships and those true relationships of one another of like, I'm here to learn about you and I'm here to learn about you as well, and how can we build a relationship that supports one another. But I think we're all here, and I think we're all trying to build a better Washington County, and we're all trying to support families to thrive and children to thrive, and I think working with one another is going to make that stronger. So I think that's what I would add.
I feel like I might have been a little narrow-minded growing up. I grew up in Washington County my whole life. I started working for the Career Center, so I was a part of the community. I worked with Maria, and it wasn't until probably 5 or 6 months after Maria got hired by Mano that I found out that you help the whole community. It's not just a population of the community. And I think that that's probably an idea that needs to be broken down. Because I think a lot of people assume that. And I'm not sure where that came from or why we thought that. I thought it my whole life growing up. So I think probably us as community partners breaking that thought down, that it is just for Spanish-speaking individuals. Assist a little bit.
I think that openness of coming and learning about what we do, and I think that there's a lot of assumptions with the work we do out there, and I think we're open to hosting everyone. If anybody wants to come and visit our office, tour the childcare, learn about the programs we do, volunteer in our events or welcome resource center. I think that's, I don't know, Laura. We have open door to invitation. If anybody wants to learn, I think that's an opportunity to kind of just know about the work we do.
When is the Posada?
Posada is December 3rd. Yeah. And then we have Dia de los Muertos November 4th as well. But we post a lot of our stuff on social media. Everything that we do, our community events are posted on social media. And then we have a newsletter as well. If you go to our website, you can sign up and get our monthly newsletter as well.
You mentioned the importance of listening to community, and I'm just curious about the different strategies or techniques that you use, practices for listening.
have our monthly Just Our Rose meetings, our community meetings. And we also have like an education program, we have parent advisory committee meetings, 3 times a year. And one of those times is during the very harvest week. We ask a lot of questions about feedback of services or what kind of services we want to see in the next season. And then in the community meetings we hold, we do updates and we ask if they want to be part of the committees to create the events, or sometimes we hold trainings, or sometimes we bring people that want to like spread the word about their organizations and collaborations and stuff like that. I think that holding those meetings is essential, and also the type of outreach that we do, try to be flexible with communicating with the community members in the sense of if they like to have WhatsApp messages, or if they want Facebook messages, or if they want to call, or if they want a home visit, do they want a flyer. I think we try to kind of be flexible in that sense so that we can reach as many people as possible. Sometimes that's not even enough.
I think the other thing that I would say is that we also are changing kind of in a shift of leadership. So our board is community led. We have community members who are Spanish speaking community that are part of the community on our board. Our staff is as well. We have staff who are part of the community. So that also is part of like how we're structured in terms of having just community be part of our team. With our childcare, we also have a parent group that meets, so it's also like listening to the parents of the child, because I think we've embedded a lot of kind of different ways in terms of like how can we have opportunities to listen to the community and for them to share their feedback. Yeah, and we also offer childcare in our meetings, so there's a lot of ways I think that just having like how to make it accessible, offering childcare, offering food, so ways to like support people that come to meetings. I think that I always see sometimes like, oh, there's a community hearing or community session at 3 p.m. I'm like, who's gonna show up to that? I'm like, they're working. So yeah, I think that that's the thing. Is like, how do we make it accessible to the community? Think about who are we trying to reach, and think about the barriers that prevent them to be in there, for them to share their voices.
I'm just going to reflect this back to you. In 2021, they wrapped up strategic planning and sort of this re-envisioning process. And as a member of the board between 2010 and 2020, I had participated in 3 of those. I think every 3 years we did one. And the one that that I supported in 2021 included more community members than staff members. It was a significant investment on the behalf of the organization, but it prioritized having community members as part of that process. They had bilingual facilitators brought in to support the process. They compensated community members for their time. They created both virtual and in-person spaces to invite as much participation as possible. And so the plan that came out of that 5-year plan, was totally reflective of that community investment. So the work that we're doing now that's guided by that plan came out of that community investment in those meetings. So I think thinking about that, and when we go back to community, they were part of all those conversations of like, here's the goals that you wanted us to do, here's what we've done, here's what we haven't done, this is what we're doing next year. They've been connected to that process from the very beginning. And I think that made this plan feel so much different than all the other ones.
So I think we have time for one more question.
Other thing I would add is investing in relationships and putting relationships first when you're doing work. That's really important in how we do the work. Is like, if there's something that's going to jeopardize a relationship with a community member or an impact, like we often say no.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your time today. And more broadly, I really appreciate that the part of Mano has demonstrated that this is possible. To create this sort of community-led organization, to create a childcare where none existed before, then expand it. I know every community is unique, but still, that's an incredibly important thing, I think, for us as a county to just know that it can be done. And have an example and a model here. And I want to really thank you for your time too. And that wraps up today. Thank you all for your time, for engaging, for being here, and for making it a very engaging day. The state listening session on the strategic plan will be happening in this room around 3 o'clock. And just for those who are staying for that, it will still happen once we break down and set up again. Thank you very much.